This is a big one. This next one, huge. Lions, Vikings, a duel in the NFC North of two of the best teams in the NFL. I think these are two of the top 5 teams in the league right now going head to head. This one's in Minnesota. Lions coming off a couple of really nice games, but Minnesota obviously has not lost this season. So they're coming off 5 great games and a bye. They've been preparing for this week for a couple of weeks now. Carmen, what do you think the matchup that matters is for two of the best teams in the NFL going head to head here?
Me, the Minnesota Vikings, looking forward to this for 2 weeks because I have been so excited for this game. As soon as, Minnesota went on their bye and I saw who they were playing afterwards, I was just like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is the top 2 teams in point differential right now. Minnesota is top, Lions second. They both, have great records. Minnesota, like you said, has not been beaten yet. And if you look back at that game, the last game they played against the Jets in London, I mean, this is a Brian Flores defense that has put every single quarterback that they have faced in a complete blender, including the most experienced quarterback in the league, which is Aaron Rodgers. Not only did you force 3 interceptions from Aaron Rodgers, you forced just his 5th pick six in his 20-year career. That is just insane numbers. And then when you consider everything that they're able to do on defense and all the teams that they've gone against, this is for real. And so the matchup that matters for me is this Lions offensive line, particularly against the creativity of Brian Flores' defense. And I say the offensive line, not Jared Goff, for a very particular reason. Because of the fact of what Brian Flores can do on early downs, especially, the way that he mixes up his fronts, it is a lot for an offensive line to pick up. And Jared Goff has one of the best offensive lines in the league, if not the best offensive line in the league in front of him. I have no doubt in my mind that Jared Goff can diagnose and understand what he's looking at. But when the post snap does not match the pre-snap look, it is up to your offensive line to be able to pick up all of the crazy stunts, all of the crazy blitz packages, the different players that are going to come in on a blitz that aren't just going to be a part of the front. It's so confusing for offensive lines. And so this is going to be a huge test for, again, what is one of the best offensive lines in football, to be able to pick up all of the different things that Brian Flores is going to try to do. On top of that, they can just beat you outright. You have guys like Jonathan Grenard leading the team with 29 pressures. I think no one talked about Jonathan Grenard, the pickup of Jonathan Grenard, enough because everybody just looked at the Vikings giving up Danielle Hunter, and they were like, "Oh, why would you do that?" Well, they got Jonathan Grenard in return, who the year before had 12 and a half sacks for the Houston Texans. This was not, it wasn't a 1-to-1 because there's not a lot of players that can go 1-to-1 with Danielle Hunter, but Jonathan Grenard, on top of adding a guy like Andrew Van Ginkel, you drafted Dallas Turner, and then you have guys like Blake Cashman, too, that were added to this roster that are being factors in the pass rush and being used in so many different ways that it's opening things up for the edge guys and Jonathan Grenard in particular. So I'm so excited to see these trenches go at it. But what we know, if there's anything we know about this Minnesota defense, it's not just the trenches that are going to be coming after you. So how can this offensive line deal with that is going to dictate how effective this Lions team can be.
I also think that's the best matchup that matters here in this game, and I think that has to be the main talking point, so I'm glad that you brought it up. I will flip to another one just because this game is so good. The Lions in the secondary versus the Minnesota Vikings at wide receiver. I mean, it's going to be huge, right? Because when you look at the coverage grade for this Lions team, it was low. It was bottom half of the NFL. Sometimes it was bottom 10 in the NFL last year. They made a commitment this offseason to fixing it, and right now they have a top 10 coverage unit in the league when it comes to just their corners and safeties. And the Minnesota Vikings have a top 10 receiving group in the league when it comes to their wide receivers, but also you got to throw Aaron Jones in there as well. I almost said Aaron Judge because I've seen so much baseball. Hawkinson? What'd you say?
And I said, and probably maybe TJ Hawkinson. They opened the practice window on him. He practiced with them, the team in London. He could be coming back.
I mean, that would obviously be huge for them as well, because what I was going to say is Justin Jefferson is doing he's doing a lot of the heavy lifting for like having an elevated receiving grade for the team. Now, it's not to say that like Addison and Naylor haven't also played well. I think they have. It's just, Jefferson's still over 30% of a wide receiver usage. They're still obviously building their passing attack through Justin Jefferson. do the Lions have anyone to cover that player in particular? You know, it's Terry and Arnold. Carlton Davis looks like he's going to play. Brian Branch was a limited participant, but it looks like he's going to play. So I feel like it's going to take a village to really stop Justin Jefferson, but that's sort of been the case in years past. Now they've got other options to be able to throw the ball to. And so I think, honestly, the real matchup that matters here is just Kevin O'Connell versus Aaron Glenn, like those coordinators going head to head against one another. Who's going to be able to stay one step ahead in this game and use their stars in the secondary and their stars at receiver versus one another? So I still, for as good as I think the Lions have played in the secondary, you got to give the advantage to what Kevin O'Connell is doing. I think he's by far the front runner for Coach of the Year, and obviously how they're going to use Justin Jefferson too. So I would give the Vikings the edge in this situation, but I cannot wait to see how this one plays out. What about a plus factor here for you in this game?
Yeah, I'm really interested to see actually how this Viking or the Lions secondary can fare without having the push up front from Aiden Hutchinson now, who is out indefinitely for the rest of the season, could maybe come back in the playoffs. I'm not going to put that past a guy like Hutch, but he was a huge factor just given how many pressures he was generating up front and how much he was helping out the back level as a result. So that's going to be really interesting to me. And if this Lions secondary can step up. But for my plus factor, it was Brian Flores today, or not today, I believe yesterday, got to the podium and said, hey, Ben Johnson has a really creative scheme. He can do a lot of different things with his players. How do you envision yourself contending with that? And Brian Flores literally just looked at the camera or looked at the reporter and said, I plan on fighting fire with fire. That should instill so much excitement for this game. And it's why I'm so excited. And I'm so excited to see what Brian Flores is able to do against someone like Ben Johnson, more specifically, someone like Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs is like, if I have to boil this down to a specific player, it is Jahmyr Gibbs as a plus factor because of how effective he can be in so many different ways. He is such a wonderfully good component to an offense that is so creative out of Ben Johnson. I mean, Ben Johnson literally loads the clip every week with trick plays specifically for his opponent. That's why this last game against the Dallas Cowboys, when they were trotting out all of these really fun scoring plays for offensive linemen, which just made me love him more, everybody was like, why are you showing everybody these trick plays? Why are you putting these on tape? You're already up. You don't need them. And I'm like, no. This was specifically for the Dallas Cowboys. This is because the Lions and Ben Johnson are petty kings. They wanted to get back at the Dallas Cowboys, not only for winning that game, but for the whole Dan Skipper reporting is eligible and the ref not hearing it and yada, yada, yada. He was going to feature the offensive line in this game. So that clip has been unloaded and now reloaded. I cannot wait to see what they have in store for a Flores defense that is very, very creative, but they can get creative as well. And that runs through Jahmyr Gibbs, who I cannot wait. That keeps this offense multidimensional. I can't even express to you how excited I am about this.
This is awesome, and it's kind of a shame that it's on 1 p.m. To be honest with you, I wish it was a primetime game, and I wish they could flex this game, but here we are. The plus factor for me, you mentioned it a little bit, you touched on it. It is the Lions defensive line without Hutchinson. And I'll name some statistics for you just because it's a PFF show and we're going to do that. Hutchinson has 45 total pressures this year. The next guy is Levon Wuzurike at 16 or at 17, and then Aleem McNeil at 16. So it's a massive drop off in total pressures. But what I'm most curious about isn't just sort of saying like, oh, somebody's got to step up. Specifically, I remember watching Hutchinson because on the In the Trenches show, Ollie Conley and I were focusing on Hutch. I think it was like 2 weeks ago, something like that. The Lions' entire defensive line structure is based around Hutchinson getting a one-on-one. And it's based around him getting a one-on-one in such a favorable situation that most offensive tackles, most right tackles in the NFL just don't have a chance. And that is not to take anything away from Aiden Hutchinson. Some of the best passers rushers in the NFL are left defensive ends for that exact reason, because you can really structure things for them to get favorable matchups and allow your stud pass rusher to win them. And that's exactly what Hutchinson was doing. But the way the Lions have set up Hutchinson, he's often aligned outside of the tackle's outside shoulder. And then the nearest defensive lineman to him is normally a 3-technique defensive tackle, somebody who is right on the outside shoulder of the guard, or sometimes it's even the inside shoulder of the guard. It's a little bit closer. They'll rotate it a little bit closer in there so that not only is he taking the attention of the guard, but also the center. The guard does not have the ability then to kick out and help the tackle from Hutchinson, who is at a wider angle. And that is why you see Hutchinson win so much with that inside spin move that is so deadly. It's because he has the space to do it, not just because he's talented enough to do it, which he is, but it's the fact that the way their defensive line is set up is for him to get that one-on-one with that interior defensive lineman set up on the inside shoulder of the guard so that the guard cannot help, because they know that the center is not going to be able to get in front of that defensive lineman quick enough, so that if the guard doesn't help, well, then the defensive tackle is just going to have a free run at the quarterback. So you almost have to pick your battles with how the Lions have set up Hutchinson so far this season. So my plus factor here is not just, okay, who needs to step up a little bit with Hutchinson? It's how they step up without Hutchinson. What does the defensive line look like at this point? Are you completely shifting your philosophy to, okay, now we're going to tuck the defensive ends in. We're going to play a little bit more traditional, maybe allow Onwuzurike or Aleem McNeil to play more 3-technique one-on-one matchups against guards in the middle. How are you going to try to make up for Hutchinson no longer being there? Or do you genuinely think that it is a next man up? You're going to play the same thing, and you're going to try to put somebody exactly where Hutchinson was and tell them to go win their one-on-ones. That's going to be fascinating to me. And whatever they try to do there, that's a plus factor to me, because if it works, they're obviously going to be cooking. And if it doesn't, that's a major issue for them moving forward to be able to get after the quarterback. So that is my plus factor.
That's going to, I don't think there's a way to replace Aiden Hutchinson 1-for-1. And Aaron Glenn pretty much came out this week and said as much. So I do think that they're going to switch into something completely different. And that's why I do think that Brian Branch is going to be a huge factor in this, because if I know anything about Aaron Glenn, he's not afraid to use guys like that in the pass rush, in kind of, bringing him in from different areas, making offensive lines account for him. That's a way to kind of get around not having the Hutchinson, and not having your focal point is just to completely shift the focal point and give a team, something that they're not quite frankly ready for. And Brian Branch really likes to hit people too. So
edge rusher Brian Branch is what you're saying. They're going to put edge. They're going to take Brian Branch and just put him in the Hutchinson role, hand in the dirt, 3-point stance.
Put him on a Cub front. Put him on a Cub front. Move him up on the line. It'd be great.
I actually do think that, he is going to be a pivotal part of this as well, that we did not bring him. We did not bring his name up enough for this matchup. He is going to be a major chess piece for them.